The broken alien girl. The night was dark, silent, and filled with cold winds that cut through the ruins of a once living city. The stars above gave no comfort, only watching like distant eyes as life slowly died below. Broken walls stood like skeletons. The smell of ash still hung heavy in the air. And the streets were empty except for one fragile figure moving through the shadows. She was an alien girl, young, thin, and weak. Her skin was pale and marked with bruises, her clothes torn from running and hiding for days. Her eyes carried stories of pain no one should ever hold. Hunger pressed against her stomach like a knife. Every step she took felt heavier than the last, as if the earth itself wanted her to collapse and never rise again. Her people were gone. She had seen them taken, some enslaved, others left to die. She remembered the screams, the fire, the ships that darkened the sky. Once she had a family, a mother who sang to her at night, a father who told her stories of strength, and a little brother who followed her everywhere. All of them gone. And now she was alone, carrying nothing but fear and the memory of love that had been stolen away. She stumbled across the broken street, her knees shaking. The cold night made her shiver, but there was no blanket, no fire, no hand to hold. Breath came in short gasps. Her vision blurred. Finally, she collapsed beside a wall, sliding down to the ground like a leaf falling from a tree. Her body trembled, her mind whispering that this was the end. She had no strength left, no reason to hope, and then she heard it. Footsteps. Her heart jumped in panic. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to melt into the shadows. Maybe it was soldiers, maybe scavengers, maybe someone who wanted to finish what the war had started. She closed her eyes, whispering a silent prayer to the stars. If they were enemies, she had no chance to fight. If they were hunters, she would be caught like prey. The footsteps grew closer, slow, heavy, deliberate. Whoever it was, they were not rushing. They moved like someone who already owned the night, someone who was not afraid. She wanted to scream, but no sound left her throat. She only hugged her knees to her chest, waiting for pain. But instead, a voice broke the silence. A deep, human voice. Are you alive? Her eyes snapped open. Figure crouched in front of her. It was a human male, older, his face scarred by battles, his uniform torn and dirty. His eyes, however, were not filled with cruelty. They were tired, yes, but there was something strange in them, something she had not seen in a long time. Compassion. She tried to move away, but her body was too weak. She could only shake her head, her lips trembling. Humans had been the ones who destroyed her people. Why would this one be any different? Maybe this was a trick. Maybe he would take her as a captive. The man frowned, studying her trembling body. Then, without a word, he removed his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. Warmth rushed over her fragile frame, shocking her more than the cold ever could. She looked up at him, confused, afraid, yet unable to pull the coat away. You'll freeze if you stay here, he said softly. Come with me. His words carried no threat, no command, only an offer. Still, she hesitated. Her heart screamed that trusting a human was dangerous. But her body wanted to live, and the warmth of the coat, the kindness in his eyes, it was something she could not ignore. He extended his hand toward her. For a long moment, she stared at it, torn between fear and a tiny spark of hope she thought was dead forever. Her fingers shook as she lifted her own hand, slowly, carefully. When her palm touched his, she felt strength, warmth, and safety. He pulled her gently to her feet, as if she were the most fragile thing in the world. She swayed, weak, but he steadied her. Then, without asking, he lifted her into his arms. Her eyes widened. No one had carried her since her father, years ago. She wanted to resist, to fight, but instead her head rested against his chest. His heartbeat was steady, strong, like a drum guiding her through the darkness. The ruins around them faded as he walked, carrying her away from the place of death. For the first time since she lost everything, she did not feel like a ghost drifting through a dying world. For the first time, she felt something else, a whisper of belonging, and deep inside her heart, though she could not yet speak it, a thought was born. Maybe I am not alone anymore. A shelter in the storm. The human carried her through the ruined streets, his arms steady, though his steps were heavy. The alien girl felt every movement, her body weak, her eyes half closed, but her mind awake. With fear, who was he? Why had he not left her to die like the others? Why would a human, the very kind that destroyed her people, hold her as if she was something precious? The cold wind blew harder, cutting through the broken city. Ash drifted in the air like black snow. The man's boots crunched against the ground, steady and unhurried. She noticed he never once loosened his grip, even though she was nothing but a stranger. She expected him to drop her, to hand her over to soldiers, but he walked with quiet determination. It was as if he had already decided that she belonged under his protection. After what felt like hours, they reached a hidden place. Behind a wall of collapsed stone, he slipped through a narrow opening. Inside, a small shelter appeared, half cave, half bunker. A faint fire glowed in the center, warming the shadows. There were blankets on the floor, a few tools, and some food stored neatly in a corner. It was not a home, but it was safe. Compared to the cold ruins outside, it was a different world. He gently placed her on a blanket and stepped back, giving her space. The girl immediately curled into herself, pulling the coat tighter around her body. Her wide eyes followed his every move, expecting danger. But the man only crouched near the fire, tossing a piece of wood into the flames. Sparks danced in the air, painting his tired face in flickering orange. "You're safe here," he said. At last, his voice calm. "No one will find you." She did not answer. Her lips pressed tightly together. Her mind screamed that she should not trust him. Humans lied. Humans killed. And yet, something about the way he looked at her was different. His eyes were not cruel. They carried sadness, yes, but also gentleness. It confused her. She did not understand it. Her stomach growled, betraying her hunger. The sound was loud in the silence. She froze, embarrassed, her face burning with shame. The human turned his head slightly, and for a moment she thought he would laugh at her weakness. But instead, he reached into a small pack and pulled out a piece of bread. Without a word, he placed it on the floor near her and returned to his place by the fire. She stared at the bread, her hands shaking. Could it be poisoned? Could this be a trap? Slowly, carefully, she lifted it to her mouth and took a bite. The taste was plain, but to her starved body, it was like a feast. She ate quickly, tears filling her eyes. For days, she had known nothing but hunger, and now warmth filled her stomach. She wanted to thank him, but the words refused to come. She only looked at him, confused by the kindness she could not understand. The man did not press her. He only watched the fire, lost in his own thoughts. His face carried scars not only on the skin, but deep in the eyes, the kind that came from too much war and too much loss. She wondered, for the first time, if maybe he too carried pain like hers. Finally, he spoke again, his tone quiet. "You don't have to tell me your name, not yet, just rest, rest." The word echoed in her ears. She had forgotten what that meant. For so long, she had lived in fear, running, hiding, surviving. Rest was something that belonged to another life, a life that was gone. But here, wrapped in his coat, near a fire, with food in her stomach, her eyelids grew heavy. Still, fear whispered inside her heart. What if he was lying? What if soldiers came? What if this was only a cruel trick to make her lower her guard? She curled tighter into the coat, watching him through half-closed eyes. He made no move toward her. He only leaned back against the wall, his head tilting as exhaustion pulled him into sleep. The firelight danced across the shelter, shadows stretching like silent guardians. For the first time in many nights, the alien girl felt something different. Then fear. She felt unsure, suspended between distrust and hope, between pain and the possibility of safety. As her eyes finally closed, she thought of the way he had carried her through the cold, how his arms had been steady when her legs gave out, and deep inside, in a place she thought had died with her family, a spark of warmth flickered. Perhaps, she thought faintly, the storm of her life had not taken everything. Perhaps shelter could still be found even in the arms of a human. The weight of the past, the morning light crept through the cracks of the ruined shelter. Smoke from the small fire curled upward, painting thin lines across the broken ceiling. The alien girl stirred beneath the coat that still wrapped her fragile frame. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Warmth touched her skin. Her stomach no longer ached with hunger, and no one was chasing her. But when her eyes opened, reality returned. She was still alive, still in a war-torn city, and a human sat only a few steps away. He was sharpening a small knife against a stone, his movements calm and steady. His back was strong, his shoulders broad, but there was no sign of cruelty in him. She watched silently, her heart tight with fear and confusion. Why had he not harmed her? Why had he given her food, his coat, and shelter when she had nothing to give in return? Her thoughts pulled her backward back into memories she had tried to bury. She remembered the night her home was destroyed. The roar of ships in the sky. The sound of doors breaking. The cries of her mother telling her to run. Oh, she remembered her father's hand pushing her into a hidden passage, his voice steady even as soldiers stormed inside. She never saw them again. Only smoke, screams, and silence followed. The memory struck her like a blade. Her chest tightened, her breathing quickened. Tears threatened to spill, but she bit her lip hard, refusing to show weakness. Humans had taken everything from her. She could not let this one see her cry, but the human noticed. His eyes lifted from the knife, landing gently on her. Nightmares? He asked softly. She froze. She did not want to answer, yet something in his tone made her chest ache. It wasn't pity, it was understanding. Still, she turned her face away, hiding behind the curtain of her tangled hair. He didn't press her. Instead, he set the knife aside and reached into a small pack. From it, he pulled out a flask and slid it across the floor toward her. Water, drink. Her throat was dry, but her suspicion was stronger. She stared at the flask, then at him. He didn't move closer, didn't force her hand. He only leaned back, waiting. Finally, with shaking fingers, she lifted the flask and sipped. The cool liquid slid down her throat, refreshing, real. For a brief second, her heart softened. The silence between them stretched. She could not stop herself. The words slipped out before she could hold them. Why? Why are you helping me? Her voice was small, rough from days of silence, but the human heard it clearly. He paused, as if searching for an answer even he did not fully know. At last, he said, because you needed it. The girl blinked. Confusion twisted inside her. That was not an answer she expected. No reason, no demand, no hidden threat. Just because. He looked at the fire, his expression shadowed. I've seen enough death. It's too much. If I can stop one more, even for a stranger, then I will. His words carried weight, heavy and honest. She studied him closely now, noticing the scars across his arms. the way his eyes sometimes drifted as if haunted by ghosts only he could see. She realized something she had not considered before. He, too, carried the weight of the past. That night, as the fire dimmed, she lay awake, watching him from the corner of her eye. He slept against the wall, his face calm but tired, his body tense even in rest. She wondered what he had lost. A family. Friends. Was he also alone in this broken world? Her heart argued with itself. One voice screamed that he was the enemy, that humans were cruel and selfish. Another voice, quieter but stubborn, whispered that perhaps he was different. Perhaps he was as broken as she was. And perhaps broken souls could understand each other. The weight of her past still crushed her chest. Every memory of her people brought pain like fire. But now she felt another wet something new. A responsibility. This human had chosen to protect her when he didn't have to. Could she trust him? Could she allow herself to hope again? The girl curled tighter into his coat, the smell of smoke and earth clinging to the fabric. She closed her eyes, but her heart beat faster than before. For the first time, she didn't fall asleep thinking only of death. She fell asleep, wondering what tomorrow might bring. A new enemy approaches. The days passed slowly inside the hidden shelter. The alien girl grew stronger with each sunrise. Her body healed, her eyes no longer as hollow as when the human first carried her. Yet inside, her heart still carried deep cracks, and trust came only in small pieces. The human never pushed her. He gave food when she needed it, water when she asked, and space when she fell silent. His patience was strange to her. She had lived in a world where kindness was rare, and now she was trying to understand it. But peace, even in small moments, could not last. The world outside was still dangerous, and danger always found its way. One evening, the human stepped out to gather supplies. The girl stayed behind, wrapped in his coat, watching the fire flicker. She listened to every sound, her ears sharp like prey, waiting for the predator. The wind howled through the cracks of the ruins, carrying whispers that made her skin crawl. She thought it was only the storm until she heard it dash footsteps, not his. Her heart froze. More than one. Heavy, careless, loud. Whoever it was, they did not care if someone heard them. Voices followed, harsh and sharp, spread out. There must be something here. Survivors always hide in these holes. Scavengers, her breath caught. In her throat, she had heard of them, bands of hunters who preyed on the weak. They sold captured aliens like her, or worse. Fear stabbed her chest. She wanted to run, but her legs shook. She wanted to scream, but her voice was gone. All she could do was press herself against the wall, praying the shadows would hide her. The footsteps grew closer. Boots crunched on stone just outside the narrow entrance. One man laughed, cruel and sharp. "I told you, smoke. Someone's been burning firewood in here." The girl's blood turned to ice. Then, in the silence between their words, another sound came, quieter but stronger. The sound of footsteps she recognized. The human had returned. The scavengers noticed too. A voice snarled, "Someone's coming. Get ready." She saw him enter, carrying a bag of supplies, his face instantly hardening when he spotted the strangers near the entrance. In one motion, he set the bag down and pulled the knife from his belt. "There's nothing for you here," he said, his voice like steel. The scavengers laughed. "We don't want your scraps, soldier. We want the girl." One of them stepped forward, eyes glinting as they landed on her trembling figure. "Oh, she's worth something. More than you." The girl's breath hitched. She pressed herself tighter into the wall, shame and terror choking her. She had become a prize, a thing to be traded. Her heart screamed, "Not again. Not again." The human moved between them, his body blocking her from their view. His knife gleamed in the firelight. "You'll have to go through me." The room grew tense, the air thick like before a storm. The scavengers grinned, drawing their own blades. The leader sneered. "Then we will." The fight erupted. The human moved fast, his blade flashing. He fought with the skill of someone who had survived too many battles. One scavenger fell with a cry. Another stumbled back, clutching his arm. But there were too many. They surrounded him, circling like wolves. The girl watched in horror, her body frozen. Every instinct told her to hide, to stay silent, to survive, no matter what. But as she saw him bleeding, struggling, his arms shaking under the weight of enemies, something inside her broke free. He was not just fighting for himself. He was fighting for her. Her heart pounded. She searched the ground, her hands trembling, until they closed around a sharp piece of broken stone. She rose, weak but burning with sudden fire. One scavenger lunged for the human from behind. Before the man could strike, she threw herself forward, slamming the stone against the attacker's head. The scavenger screamed, stumbling, giving the human just enough time to strike back. The human's eyes met hers for a split-second surprise, then pride, then something deeper. He nodded once, as if to say, "We fight together." The battle raged. It was brutal, messy, filled with shouts and blood. But at last, the scavengers fled, dragging their wounded into the night. The shelter was left in silence again, broken only by the sound of heavy breathing. The girl collapsed to her knees, the stone falling from her shaking hands. Tears streamed down her face, but they were not only from fear. For the first time in her life, she had fought not for her people, not for revenge, but for someone who had chosen her. The human knelt beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. His voice was low, but it carried weight. "You're safe, I promise." She looked at him through blurred vision, her lips trembling. Words finally escaped her throat. "Why? Why risk your life for me?" He didn't hesitate. "Because you're not nothing. You're worth saving." Her heart broke open at those words. For so long, she had believed she was worthless, a survivor with no family, no future. But in his eyes, she saw something else. A reason to keep breathing. A reason to fight. That night, as the storm raged outside, she curled into his coat once more. But now, it wasn't only warmth she felt. It was something new, something fragile, but alive. Hope. Standing together, the shelter smelled of smoke and iron after the fight. Drops of blood marked the ground, some from the scavengers, some from the human himself. He sat near the fire, pressing a cloth to his arm where a blade had cut him. His breath was steady, but his face showed the strain of battle. The alien girl sat across from him, her hands still shaking. The stone she had used to strike the scavenger lay beside her, stained red. She could not take her eyes off it. She had never fought before. She had never lifted her hands to hurt anyone. And yet, tonight, she had done it. She had chosen to stand. Beside him, instead of hiding, he noticed her staring, silent and lost in thought. "You did well," he said simply, breaking the heavy silence. Her head snapped up, confusion in her eyes. I was afraid." "Everyone is afraid," he replied, tightening the cloth around his wound. "Courage is when you act anyway." His words echoed inside her chest. Courage. It felt strange, almost impossible that he would use such a word for her. For so long, she had thought herself weak, just a broken survivor. But when she looked at his face, she realized he meant it. He believed it. Slowly, she crawled across the floor and picked up another cloth from his supplies. Without asking, she reached for his arm. He stiffened at first, but then relaxed as she pressed the fabric gently against his wound. Her touch was careful, trembling, but filled with a new strength. "You bleed because of me," she whispered, guilt heavy in her tone. He shook his head. "I bleed because of them. Protecting you was my choice." She lowered her eyes, biting her lip. A small fire warmed her heart. He had fought for her. He had risked his life for her. And she had not. Run. For the first time, she felt as if she was not a burden. She was part of something bigger, part of them. That night, they sat closer to the fire than before. The shadows danced on the walls as the storm raged outside. She told him small pieces of her story about her family, her people, the night. She lost everything. Her words came slowly, often breaking, but he listened without interruption. He didn't ask questions that would hurt. He only nodded, letting her voice flow, letting her release the pain she had carried alone for too long. When her voice cracked, he said softly, "You survived. That means you carry their strength. And now, you're not alone anymore." The words struck her heart. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw more than a human soldier. She saw a man who carried his own ghosts, who had chosen to fight not because of duty, but because of compassion. And she saw something else, too, a spark of belonging. The days that followed were different. They began to move together, not as protector and burden, but as partners. When he searched for food, she followed, learning the hidden paths and traps of the ruins. When he set traps for scavengers, she helped gather the supplies. When he stood guard at night, she kept the fire alive. There were moments when their eyes met in silence, filled with an unspoken truth. They needed each other. One evening, as the sun set red across the broken city, they returned from searching supplies. A sudden noise made them freeze, voices again, not far away. Scavengers had returned, angry and determined. The human drew his knife, ready to face them. But before he could step forward, she touched his arm. Her eyes burned with determination. "Not alone," she said firmly. For the first time, her voice carried strength instead of fear. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Together." When the scavengers appeared, they did not find a frightened girl hiding behind a soldier. They found two figures standing side by side, ready to defend their fragile shelter. The human moved like a storm, but she too fought, using quick strikes, distractions, and courage she never thought she had. The scavengers, shocked by her defiance, retreated once more. The ruins fell silent, leaving only the sound of heavy breathing and racing hearts. Afterward, girl collapsed against the wall, laughing weakly through tears. "I thought I would die," she admitted. He sat beside her, his chest heaving. "We didn't, because we stood together." The firelight returned to their eyes. The bond between them, once fragile and uncertain, had become something stronger, something built not on fear, but on shared struggle. That night, as they sat close, she whispered words that surprised even her. "You are family." The human looked at her in silence, then placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Then so are you." The world outside was still broken, still cruel, but inside that small shelter, two lost souls had found something powerful. Not just survival, not just trust, they had found each other. Healing hearts. The days after the fight changed everything. The alien girl no longer felt like a ghost drifting through ruins. For the first time since her world was destroyed, she felt alive. Not because the city was safe, it was still broken, still dangerous, but because she no longer walked through it alone. The human had given her food, shelter, and protection. But now, he gave her something even more powerful: hope. Each morning, he shared his rations with her before eating himself. She noticed how carefully he divided the food, always making sure she had enough, even if it left little for him. Once, she tried to give half of her portion back, but he only shook his head with a quiet smile. "You need it more," he said. 1. Afternoon, they sat outside their shelter, the broken city stretching around them. The wind carried dust across the empty streets, but for a moment, the silence was peaceful. She tilted her head back, looking at the sky. The stars would come soon, and she whispered softly, "My mother used to tell me stories about the stars. She said they were voices of our ancestors watching over us." The human didn't laugh. He didn't call it foolish. Instead, he looked at the sky, too. "My father told me the same thing," he admitted quietly. Different words, but the same meaning. Her eyes widened. "Your people believe that too?" He nodded. "Maybe not all, but I do." Something inside her shifted. For so long, she had seen humans as only destroyers. But now, sitting beside this man, she realized they shared more than she thought. Both had families. Both had lost. Both still carried the weight of memory in their hearts. That night, as the fire crackled, she surprised herself by laughing. It was soft at first, uncertain, but real. She laughed because he had tried to fix a broken pot and spilled water all over himself. He froze, staring at her in shock, then laughed too, a sound deep and rough, like stones breaking. For the first time, the shelter echoed not with fear or silence, but with something lighter. "You laugh," he said, still smiling. Her cheeks warmed. I forgot how." He looked at her for a long moment, his eyes softer than ever. "Then remember, don't let the world take it from you again." The days grew into weeks. She learned his ways, how to track steps in the dust, how to tell which food was safe, how to stay hidden when enemies passed nearby. He, in turn, listened when she spoke of her people, their songs, their old traditions. She even sang one once, her voice trembling but clear. The human sat silently, his head bowed, as if honoring the memory of lives he had never known. But healing was not only about survival. Healing was about the small moments, the way he always placed his coat around her shoulders when the nights grew too cold, the way she shared her stories to fill the silence he never wanted to admit was heavy. The way their eyes found each other whenever danger passed too close. One evening, they sat by the fire, their shadows flickering on the walls. She looked at him and asked softly, "Why do you keep helping me? Even now, when you could have left me behind?" His gaze lingered on the flames. "Because I lost too," he admitted. "Family. Friends, people I swore to protect. I couldn't save them, but I can save you." Her chest ached. His words were not grand or polished, but they carried truth like a blade. She reached out, her small hand resting on his scarred one. He did not pull away. For a moment, they sat in silence. Two broken hearts beating side by side. From that night on, something invisible, yet unbreakable, grew between them. It wasn't only survival anymore. It was connection. It was belonging. The girl began to dream. Again, not of death, but of tomorrow. She dreamed of walking under the stars without fear, of singing her people's songs without silence, of laughing without guilt. She dreamed of a future she had thought was gone forever, and when she awoke, she always found the human nearby, watching the fire, guarding her sleep. His presence told her that maybe, just maybe, those dreams were no longer impossible. Her heart whispered words she was not ready to speak out loud. Words about family, about safety, but something even deeper. But for now, it was enough to know that the weight she carried did not crush her anymore, because she no longer carried it alone. Wrapped in his arms, the city was never silent for long. Danger always returned, no matter how well they hid. Weeks passed in their fragile shelter, but both the alien girl and the human knew they could not stay forever. Food was running low. Scavengers still prowled the streets, and the war beyond the ruins was not yet over. One evening, As the sky burned red with sunset, the human stood at the shelter's entrance, his knife in hand. His face was set with grim determination. The girl watched him, her chest tightening with worry. She could see the scars across his arms, the weight of battles already fought. He looked like a man prepared for another. "They will come back," he said quietly. "Scavengers, soldiers, maybe worse. If we stay here, they will find us." Her heart sank. The thought of leaving the only safe place she had known since her family's death filled her with fear. But she also knew he was right. The world outside might kill them, but staying still would too. "Where will we go?" She asked softly. He turned to her, his eyes steady. "Away from here, to the mountains. Fewer people, more places to hide. It won't be easy, but it's better than waiting for death." The girl lowered her gaze, trembling. The old her would have broken down, too afraid to take another step. But now, after everything they had endured together, she knew she could not turn back. Not when he had fought for her, bled for her, stayed by her side. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "I'll go with you." That night, they prepared to leave. The human packed the little food and water they had. The girl gathered blankets, her hands no longer clumsy, but steady. Every small action carried weight, every glance between them, unspoken promise. They were no longer two strangers bound by chance. They were partners. Before dawn, they left the shelter behind. The air outside was bitter cold, the ruins quiet under the fading stars. She clung to his coat as they walked, every step heavy but determined. Fear pressed against her heart, whispering of capture, of death, of losing him. But each time the fear rose, she looked at him and the fear grew smaller. Hours passed. They moved carefully, avoiding the open roads, listening to every sound. Just when she began to believe they might escape unnoticed, a shout rang out. There! By the wall, soldiers' her blood ran cold. A group of armored men blocked their path, weapons raised. The human immediately pushed her behind him, his knife ready, his stance firm. The soldiers advanced, their voices cruel. "Hand over the alien," one barked. "She belongs to us." The girl's heart pounded. She wanted to scream, to run, but her legs refused. She could not let him face them alone. Not again. Not after everything. "No," she cried, stepping forward. Her small frame shook, but her voice carried fire. "I belong to no one." The soldiers laughed, mocking her courage. But in that laugh, in that cruel sound, the human moved like lightning. He charged, striking with the fury of a man who had lost too much already. Steel clashed, shouts filled the air, and chaos erupted. The girl grabbed a fallen weapon, her fear drowned by a surge of determination. She fought too, striking when enemies came too close, protecting him as he had always protected her. Together they moved, back to back, their bonds stronger than fear. At last, the remaining soldiers fled, dragging their wounded away. Silence fell, broken only by their ragged breaths. The girl dropped the weapon, collapsing to her knees, her body shaking from exhaustion. The human staggered too, blood running down his arm. But instead of resting, he knelt beside her, his arms wrapped around her tightly, holding her as if the world itself might try to tear her away. She buried her face against his chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. I thought I would lose you," she whispered. He tightened his hold, his voice firm but gentle. "You won't. Not while I'm breathing." In that embrace, she felt something she thought she would never feel again: safety. Not the fragile safety of hiding in shadows, but the deep safety of belonging, of being seen, of being loved, even if the word had never been spoken aloud. Her trembling hands clutched his coat. As she whispered the truth she could no longer hide. "You are all I have now. You are my family." For a long moment, the world seemed to pause. Then, slowly, he lowered his head and rested it against hers. His voice was rough, heavy with emotion. "And you are mine." They sat together in the ruins of a broken world. Two souls who had lost everything, yet found each other. The storm outside still raged. Enemies would come again. The future was uncertain. But in that moment, wrapped in his arms, the alien girl knew she was no longer nothing. She was no longer alone, and for the first time in her shattered life, she allowed herself to believe in tomorrow.